You had I saw that there was Trump's lawyers were on Fox. Apparently, I just saw the headlines because I cannot watch much of Fox these days, saying that this is the end of the rule of law. Really, it's the end of the rule of law. Really, like we haven't had prosecutors who made mistakes before. We really think that Trump is the apotheosis and manifestation and nation made flesh. And in fact, we do. That's a good segue. Um, Jonathan Swan tweeted out this excerpt from a statement from the New York Republican Club, which I believe has some sort of venerable tradition of being one of the oldest Republican clubs, or maybe the original Republican Club. Um, long time to supporting Lincoln and all this kind of stuff. In the last few years, it's gone grifter MAGA in a huge way. I noticed a few years ago the people who were going to speak at its gala were all of the sort of dregs of sort of Newsmax, OAN, E-Team, Fox people. But even so, this is really kind of remarkable. Um, and this is just one paragraph from a whole trough of garbage. Okay, President Trump embodies the American people, our psyche, from id to superego, as does no other figure. His soul is totally bonded with our core values and emotions, and he is our total and indisputable champion. This tremendous connection threatens the established order. And then it goes on. The fix has always been in quotation marks, against our president, but his motivation and love for the American people drove him to pursue the national excellence that his unique vision perceived lay within our reach. In doing so, he opened so many eyes to reality. Okay, now, first of all, this reads like Chat GPT wrote it while high. I want to be really clear about this. It is profoundly stupid, and whatever uh, high self-regarding poli-sci major intern wrote this garbage should be tremendously embarrassed, and it is ridiculous, and I'm reluctant to take it any more seriously than that, except I do think it represents, first of all, the pseudo-intellectual horseshit that dominates so much of the MAGA right. These people who say that DeSantis was his betrayal of Trump was second only to Lucifer's betrayal of God and all this nonsense. These people, to the extent they believe it, they're idiots. To the extent they don't believe it, what they're doing is they are giving a pretext or a rationale or a permission structure or whatever to a bunch of low IQ, low engaged people to act on their uninformed emotional passions by making it sound like there's this very sophisticated argument to justify a bunch of mob-like idiocy. But so first of all, President Trump does not embody the American people. No president, with the exception maybe in a poetic sense of, say, George Washington, embodies the American people. Even Abraham Lincoln, gotta like Abraham. Well, these days maybe you don't gotta like Abraham Lincoln. I like Abraham Lincoln. Didn't embody the American people because, among other things, he was the commander in chief when he was fighting half of the American people in a ugly civil war, right? So the whole idea of a leader embodying the people is a very German, very dumb form of nationalism, that somehow there's an individual who is the Volksgemeinschaft incarnate and represents our passions and our emotions, or our id to superego, whatever the hell this Yacht thinks that means. But just as an empirical matter, he can't embody and represent all the American people and its core values and its core emotions. Whatever the hell are core emotions? I don't know. Because first of all, the guy never won a majority of the vote. Just as sort of an empirical poli-sci nerdy propeller beanie kind of thing, this is just, again, so profoundly stupid. And it gets at the heart of one of the reasons why nationalism is so problematic. And I've written this so many friggin' times. You know, the problem with nationalism and populism is that it uses the language of all the people when it really only means some of the people, right? It only means the subset of people that in which apparently resides the true spirit, the true soul, the true and authentic genetic stock, whatever phrasing you want to put on it, of the real Americans, or real French, or real German, or whoever, right? And by definition, then, anybody who disagrees with that movement or is a critic of that leader must therefore be not an authentic American, or a treasonous and parasitic German, or some sort of fifth column, which these idiots talk about too. And that's why, part of the genius of liberal democratic capitalism, and particularly the American constitutional order, is that the fundamental political unit in the American political system is the individual. Because when it's the individual, you cannot talk about, even though America is full of important collective institutions, families, communities, all these churches, all those kinds of things. But as a matter of politics, the game of politics, it's about the individual. Or at least I shouldn't even say that about politics. About law, it's about the individual. There's no collective guilt. There's no collective punishment. The sins of your ancestors are not visited upon you. It's all about what you did and what you didn't do, and not what somebody else did who looks like you or sounds like you or worships God the same way as you do. There is no transitive property to guilt or innocence in the American system of law and the constitutional order. And to the extent there are groups that are essential to the American constitutional order, they are divvied up into specific institutions, state legislatures, governorships, city councils, mayors, senators, congressmen, governors, different branches of government that represent different political units that are all in turn made, sort of turtles all the way down, of individuals, right? You don't vote as a block in America. You vote as an individual. Now, political science, political consultants and campaign people, they want to turn individuals into blocks, right? They want to digitize the electorate in ways that let them speak to large groups of people. But that's just marketing. Philosophically, metaphysically, theoretically, politically, constitutionally, legally, this country is about a certain set of rules. It is about a certain set of rights that attain to individuals. And when you start talking about how the authentic nation and the authentic people are represented by some sort of authentic leader, you're trying to bypass all of that stuff. And it's grotesque, and it's dangerous, and it's stupid. It's just so profoundly friggin' stupid. And so, everyone kind of, first of all, you kind of need to calm down. And one of the things that drives me crazy about this, right? Okay, so just to stay on this point for a second. I am constantly hearing about how nationalism is great. We're nationalists. We're not conservatives. Conservatism is ash heap of history. Blah 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 blah. Right? I'm going to be reviewing Patrick Deneen's new book. I haven't gotten to it yet. I just cracked the first few pages. But this whole argument about how the liberal order, that was ushered in through the Glorious Revolution or the Enlightenment or the American Revolution, whatever, it kind of it's played out, needs to go, whatever. There are more authentic voices of political legitimacy and all these kinds of things. And you have smart people like Patrick Deneen making these arguments, and you have a lot of really dumb people making these arguments. But what is sort of hilarious to me is that we're constantly hearing about, the importance of nationalism, the importance of populism and all these kinds of things. And then you get this case, and all of a sudden you get all of these people who say this stuff, all of a sudden switching gears and saying the rule of law is so important, and no one is above the law, and the law rules here, and blah, blah, blah. Well, which is it? Because, like, adherence to the rule of law is not exactly a cornerstone of nationalism. It's not exactly a cornerstone of populism. And in fact, the rule of law and sort of abstract principles is, kind of what created, at least historically, nationalism. It was a rebellion against the sort of mechanistic thinking of the Enlightenment. It's where you got romantic nationalism. And so, like, it's just kind of funny to me that all these people are talking about how great nationalism, how great and wonderful nationalism is, and the poetry and the romance and the mystery of it, and how you have to understand it in your bones, and all these people who care about, textualism, or, neutral procedures and all of these kinds of things. The second it's violated to their inconvenience, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the rule of law. And let's be honest here, like, Donald Trump could not give a rat's ass about the rule of law. Like, he pardoned people, he pardoned people who refused to, like, show contrition, who did not face trial. He just preemptively pardoned them because they were political allies, because they were criminals that he liked. This is a guy, Mr. Rule of Law, who wanted to suspend not long ago, 4 months ago, said that the Constitution needed to be suspended to put him back in power. I just can't take I can take seriously the people who think the rule of law matters, right? I've had this ongoing sort of quasi-argument with Sarah about this rule of law stuff, and she's much more vexed about the Bragg thing than I. Again, I think what Bragg is doing is bad. I think what Bragg is doing is ill-advised. Again, if it is as has been reported, because we don't know. That said, so I can have respect for people who are willing to simultaneously admit, as Sarah obviously is, that Trump couldn't give a rat's ass about the rule of law. That Trump couldn't give a rat's ass or even adequately explain how the Constitution works. But I can't take it from, Trump world, the Mar-a-Lago world, claiming, wanting these protections that they don't believe should be afforded to others. Does anybody, this is the guy who wanted the Justice Department to lie about all manner of things, to prosecute all sorts of things that weren't prosecuted, wanted to use the IRS against his political enemies. The guy doesn't care about the rule of law. And these jabbering bandersnatches at places like the New York Republican Club, who are just friggin', chat GPTing out their asses on this stuff, can't see it or refuse to acknowledge it. In either way, it deserves contempt. And again, if you're going to be a nationalist, be a friggin' nationalist and just admit that you're losing and it makes you mad. But don't try to appeal to principles that you actually don't hold on to. It's just basically nearest weapon to hand nonsense.